Welcome to the Elementary Podcast. We're your hosts, Sean Brady and
Kevin Clyde,
two sixth-grade teachers in Saratoga Springs, Utah.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Elementary.
Happy to be here. We got Sean, S to the Brady.
We got K to the Klein, and we are interviewing none other than
Landon, the man,
Mortenson.
Thank you.
So our purpose today is to get to know you, where you come from, what brought you in to the classroom.
And we should probably tell everyone that we met Landon as a fourth grade teacher. He came to Saratoga Shores, which is where we're at, several years ago, and he did an awesome job here.
Oh,
fantastic.
Only left us because we're in a growth.
I was forced out.
He was forced
We
out.
didn't
It
force
was
you
a very close vote. We had a staff meeting entirely.
He got voted off the
Do we
island.
keep Landon or not? There were signs up. Landon must go.
He must go.
No, Team Landon. But yeah, it was very close. No, we're in a growth area here in the city, and so they opened up a new school just south of us, and so Landon went to open a school.
I did. I went to teach fifth grade there.
But this was not your first gig, so
No, it is not.
Walk us back.
All right.
Start us from the beginning. How did you end up in elementary?
How did I end up in elementary school? So my journey, I would say, I wasn't my first choice growing up. I didn't choose to be a teacher. I actually, similar to Timmy Goodman, I was wanting to pursue dentistry. That's
No way.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That was actually I wanted to be a dentist. Well, that was because one of my uncles is a dentist, and I was looking at it for the wrong reasons. Dang, they make good money,
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I want a job where I can make money,
Fridays
whatever.
off.
And I ended up in teaching. So,
Well,
so
welcome.
anyways, no, yeah, I, in high school, I was like, I wanted to be a dentist, but then it was just for the money. And, then I lived in a different country for a period of time. And then was there, when I was, interacting with other people in Brazil.
Oh,
okay.
That I decided to, that was what was the nudge I needed to pursue teaching, as well as I come from a family of teachers. So my grandpa was he was a teacher during the school year, but then he did summer school. He was principal over summer school. He did high school. No, maybe it was 7th or 8th grade science is what he did. Yeah. He did biology. And then my uncle, he just retired this last year. He was a teacher in elementary school for his whole entire career.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
He did 4th, he did 5th, he did 6th.
Runs in the family.
Runs in the family.
Heck yeah.
I have other uncles as well who are teachers, cousins. So it's in my family.
Surrounded by it.
I'm surrounded by it. Yeah, my dad is not.
He's a dentist, is he?
No, he's not. So my dad, he didn't go to college. He works I'm from Cache Valley, so he works in a cheese factory.
Nice.
Yeah. And
Northern Utah, Cache Valley, lots of cows.
That's right. And so part of the thing that inspired me to be a teacher was a mixture of my dad always talked about his dad being a teacher. And just, my dad he currently still does. He has great work ethic. And so my dad, he loves to teach, not in a classroom capacity, but he loves history. So I remember him always sharing historical facts and all these things. I know deep down, I know he wouldn't mind being a history teacher, but he had a young family, was found it hard to go back to college, those kind of things. But my dad was a huge influence on me being a teacher because of seeing his work ethic and just always wanting to learn more just about history. But what happened was it was once I came back to the U.S., I was 21. I already knew at that point, I was like, I want to be a teacher.
So what happened in Brazil that made you decide that?
It was interacting. So I served a religious mission
Nice.
for my church. And it was teaching people just about, Bible and my the Book of Mormon and stuff like that I decided, what, I really enjoy this, and seeing the change in people and seeing the influence I had, especially on younger people, and being able to where they didn't have much hope in their lives, and being able to teach them and seeing how it could affect them for, the greater good. That is what pushed me into teaching, because I loved making a change.
Well, that makes sense. So you were able to see some real positive changes just through what you were sharing, through education, and that led to your desire to actually come back and do that.
Yeah, and so I came back, got my bachelor's at Utah State University.
Nice.
So go Aggies,
Straight up Aggie.
straight up.
Aggie.
Yeah, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it was interesting. A lot of people are like, "Oh, but you're going to be like the only dude in this kind of thing."
Not wrong.
It
seems like it. You're not alone, man.
It's true. I remember going into my classes, and I remember being in an auditorium. Like, we had this. It was one of our our physics class we had to take, and I remember we were in this big auditorium. I think there was like 400 people there, and I was the only guy there.
Were you? Oh,
I
wow.
was. There was like 400 women.
What's that like? Like,
it's kind of weird.
Uh-huh.
It's, like,
did you get looks?
It wasn't like,
So
there's that guy.
Where are you supposed to be right now, or what are you trying to find? Did you think you were lost?
Did you get lost,
Did
little
you get
boy?
lost? Are you in the wrong spot? No, it was nothing like that. I mean, they were like, they'd always like, it was kind of weird because they'd always like see me like kind of as like that's so cute. You're choosing to
Help little children.
We need male role models.
Did you hear that a lot?
I hear that all the time. We need a male role model.
Yep.
And, which is true.
I want to unpack that at some point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's see if we come back to that, because, it's problematic.
Yes.
I get where people are coming from with it. But anyway, keep telling your story. You know what? I want to know, though. So your decision to major in ed, you at some point you push that button or you click that on the computer here. What was that like? Were you sure about it at that point?
I was pretty sure. Once I started like college, like 21, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. There was no changing that.
Why ed? That's the question.
A lot of it was my uncle as well. Like my uncle Evan Mortenson.
Shout out to Evan.
I know.
Let's go, Evan.
What's up, Uncle Evan? Now was a huge inspiration because like I remember growing up, and I remember we would go to Oregon, where in Klamath Falls, that's where he's from, and they get out of school like late June, and we'd go up for like summer break with my family, and I remember always like, hey, let's go hang out with Uncle Evan at his school. And I'm like, well, no, he's still teaching, but I remember we'd have like little family get-togethers, and we'd like play in the gym with the equipment and stuff like that. I just still remember like, one of the first times I ever saw him when he taught fourth grade it was all about, having fun. Right. And I remember we were walking into the school, and he had staged this whole situation where he was going to act like he was, physically reprimanding a student and like yelling and throwing him in the hall. So we would freak out. We were like, oh my gosh. And I remember so he saw us like park, he looked out his window.
Right.
And so he waited until like we were walking upstairs, me, my dad, and my brothers. And all of a sudden, this kid comes like flying out of his room, like he got like shoved out. And my uncle goes out. He's like, "How dare you do that?" Like has him pinned against the wall. He's screaming at him. I'm like, "Oh my gosh!"
Oh wow!
And I was like, "Ah!" And then, and then it turns out it was a joke. They all started laughing. My uncle just wanted to scare us. He think it was funny. And then we went to his classroom, said hello, and it was just seeing like the kids interact with him. It was fun. Like seeing school being a fun place. And I was like, you know what? I want to be like that.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be able to go and work and have fun and, be myself and show kids that education is not this boring thing. Like, it's a fun place to be.
So how many times have you fake terrorized a child?
Oh, man.
Fake
I don't know about terrorized because it's a little different like in the current.
A little bit different.
Oh, yeah.
It's just,
Sean and I had that conversation.
Yes, we did.
Today.
We had that conversation.
So many things you can't do. That would be another great episode. All the things that we went through as elementary students
that you could not even do.
For those of us, hitting 40 or over.
Yeah,
yep.
That'd be
but I like to play and tease with my students.
Right.
Because I feel like it creates a bond.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's in those like moments. Those are like those kids that really like need that stability in their lives. they need school, and like a lot of kids come to school and like they have rough home lives. And if it's a place that they don't feel like they can, laugh, have fun, it's just it's miserable.
I read a book on play by Stuart Brown. I think he's kind of the authority on the psychology of play and just how important that is for creating a sense of safety. And a lot of times, there's another guy, I can't remember his name, but that's what he does, especially when you're working with traumatized kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You can't just sit down, okay, tell me what your problems are.
No.
And you explain that, and then there'll be this catharsis, right? You'll get it out just through this linear conversation.
Yeah,
You just sit down, you start playing with them.
Exactly.
And that creates the sense of safety that allows for anything that they need to share or, to emerge to happen. So,
Well,
go ahead.
And I was going to say that might go back to what people are saying about having positive male role models, because maybe there's not a father in the home.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's other struggles. The parents are fighting and whatnot. And if they can come to your classroom and feel safe and feel valued by an adult, man or woman, but we've all heard that as guys, they need strong
male role models.
Male role models. I mean, that's something unique that we can offer.
Yeah. And it is unique, but like kind of talking about like the males in the classroom, like you need a good male role model. Like the flip side is a lot of times as a male teacher, because they need a good male role model, we tend to end up with a lot more severe trauma, severe behaviors in the classroom.
Yeah. And I even had a teacher come up to me and say, just matter of factly, like, does that bother you? That as a man, a lot of times they'll put some of the tougher kids in your class. And I'm like, aha. So you're admitting
It's true.
Yes.
In case you couldn't tell.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how it kind of comes out that way. I've even heard in the past when certain individuals have been put in my class, it's been because that's what they want. They think that this particular individual will do better with a male teacher, which isn't always the case.
No, it's not.
But again, and we should get back to your story, and then hopefully we'll address that. Okay, so why did they think that? Just articulating that would be an interesting exercise. But there you are, Landon. You walk into this physics class, 1 of 400.
1 of 400. What a great ratio for a college.
It was funny because it was just interesting just sitting there and singing physics, and I was 1 of 400, and it was kind of interesting because you had some like weird stereotypes come out. Like there was a hard math problem. I remember they would call on me.
Oh gosh,
because
the
teacher would, and other students, the professor. The professor was a woman.
Yeah.
Or like other students couldn't get. They would like, Landon, like single me out, which was okay. But I'm like, dang, like I don't know this.
Is that because you distinguished yourself as being good at math, or just because you were a guy?
I would, people who know me as an adult, I'm a pretty outspoken person. Like when I'm in meetings, I'm usually the person like, dude, you need to shut up. You're too loud. Because I'm like making little like quips here and there. Maybe the teacher's calling me to like tell me to be quiet. I don't know. But I feel like it wasn't just in that physics. I felt like throughout my entire like college experience that there would be times that other people like totally like blank stares. They'd be like, Landon, what do you think? Because they want to get the male input because I was, I was the only one.
That's a lot of pressure, man.
But it was, it was interesting. And so I was like, it's kind of the name of the game.
Yeah.
It's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You get used to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like I've never thought like, oh darn, I'm being, singled out kind of thing. No, it was, kind of got to roll with the punches.
It was never in a negative sense.
It was never in a negative sense.
What would you know? You're a guy, that sort of thing, or dismissive.
No, it was just
even awkward though.
It was awkward. I would say awkward at times because, I'd be like, I don't know, and like me, I can't just be like, like whispered I'm the type of person I would be like, come back to me. I would just flat be like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
But even since it's. We went through the program to become teachers. Was it just awkward being like one of the few guys out there, or was it awkward going into a profession that most people frankly know doesn't pay the big bucks?
So I know that it wasn't awkward for me being the minority, the minority gender in the educational space, but I just kind of accept that because of, growing up, like my uncle, my grandpa, all these things. It was just, I knew that's what to expect kind of thing.
You were surrounded by it.
I was surrounded by it. Yeah. As well as like, even in my own like educational experience in elementary school, like I had like, I had a fourth grade teacher who was male and a fifth grade teacher. And they were the only ones in the school.
Right.
And so I was surrounded by it. So it didn't really like faze me too much.
It was pretty normal.
Pretty normal. And as far as like the pay goes, I mean, that's always like as like the breadwinner, like I have a wife, I have 3 kids now. I remember starting off in education, I was, like, oh, how am I going to make it? That's always a huge thing.
Yeah. So what was that like, being the breadwinner? And
it was, when I first started teaching, like I wasn't in like the norm, like I wasn't in public. I was actually in charter, which charter technically is public.
Right. Public funds. Yeah.
Public funds, all those things. But it's a different world in charter school.
And just in case someone is listening and doesn't quite understand the difference, go ahead.
So charter, basically, the way that it's run, you have a board. I mean, you have it's not like a district. You have like your superintendent. And you do have your board as well.
Right.
But it's different. It's like it's run by like just people who volunteer.
Community members as opposed to kind of former educators.
Yeah. And a lot of them, they don't take a pay for it. This is like on the side. Like they come after their normal job at the end of the day. Like they come and they meet and they decide, and then the schools, whatever. And so it was interesting that they run things a little differently. Like you don't have to have necessarily the credentials to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, you do ARL, alternate route to licensure. Obviously in the state of Utah, you have to have a teaching license to teach.
Right.
But you can get into I know that when I first started teaching, you had to have a bachelor's in, elementary education is what it started off as. But then that changed, and it was as long as you have a bachelor's degree, you can teach. Mm-hmm. But then you have to get a teaching degree. And so
when is this? Like, how long have you been teaching?
So I've been teaching 10 years.
Nice.
So I remember when I first started in charter, the pay scale works differently. It's very much performance based. You don't go on like your traditional like lanes and tiers like they have in traditional school districts. Mm-hmm. And even then, like it's not like a set contract like it is in a school district. You can lose your job at any time. It's like normal business.
Oh my!
They can look at you and decide, hey, we don't want you anymore. See you, bye. You're out the door.
Did they ever do that in the middle of a school year, or?
Obviously, it never happened to me, but there were a couple instances where there were teachers that just weren't, up to par, I guess, and They just were like, okay, we're going to have to ask you to leave, with no real plan to have anybody take their class.
Oh,
and so then they would just
have that in place.
They would. It was kind of like a normal, like a business job. Like they knew that something was going to happen. Like, we're going to get rid of this person, so we're going to put the position up for hire.
Yeah.
While the person's still working there, and they interview while the person's still working there.
Does the person know that's going on?
They could not. So there was that. Like, ooh, like what's going to happen? And for the most part, those were extreme cases that did happen. They usually would wait till the end of the year. Kind of give due diligence, be a little about it,
yeah,
and let you know. But there was that, like, starting off on that, I was a little like, oh man, like at any point. And I remember this was my first year teaching, and I was like terrified because we just found out my wife was pregnant, and the question is like, as a breadwinner, am I going to be able to earn enough to support a family and benefits, health insurance, all those things, because everybody always told me growing up, you go into teaching not for the pay, but the benefits are amazing.
Oh my gosh, that's what they said.
That's what they said. Everybody always told me the benefits are amazing. But I know, like, after 2008 happened with the whole, housing crisis and all those things, everything kind of restructured.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, dang. And I remember a huge thing, like in the beginning when I was teaching, I just wanted to get my foot in the door somewhere. So I started teaching. They kind of like recruited me, and I started great. I didn't know if I could question my pay, my benefits.
Well, especially in that environment.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And, it took me about I taught charter for 4 years. And I said, I got to find something. Because I remember my benefits were extremely expensive. Like, it wasn't like paid for.
Healthcare was
very expensive. And pay was.
Was your wife working or just?
So my wife worked part-time. And then once she had our first kid. So she worked full-time until she had her first kid. So my first year, she worked full-time until about April. And then she had our first child. And then she went part-time from home. Luckily, her job allowed her to work from home. I'm very fortunate of that.
Can I step back a little bit?
Yeah.
From back to when you started the undergraduate, were you married at that time? Or
So, yes, I got married.
She married you fully knowing you were
fully knowing
a health teacher. I think that's very important for a lot of guys.
Absolutely. So I think it's funny is because we both my wife got her degree because she graduated from college as well in family consumer human development.
Okay.
And so which is known to it also is not a career choice that makes the most amount of money.
Right.
Okay. It's usually like your social workers or working for nonprofits.
Uh-huh.
And she, working with families and we both we knew very well early on, we were when we eventually would get married, we probably wouldn't have the biggest, bank account, but we accepted that because we were happy.
Yeah.
It wasn't the professions we were choosing.
So you never at any point during your undergraduate said, dentistry's kind of looking good right now?
Never.
Never questioned.
Never even looked back.
Teacher.
Never looked back. Once because we knew that's just what I wanted to do. My wife was, same way, we both were happy.
Yeah.
And we both come from families that, scrimped and saved a lot.
Yeah.
Like I said, my dad didn't have a college education. Right. And so he worked at, just a typical, his job actually was a lot of swing shifts.
Wow.
Double shifts, just to make sure that we had, food on the table.
Wow.
And my wife's family as well, her dad, they very, very savvy with money, save money, all this, and penny pinchers, all those things. So we were both kind of raised that mentality. So we knew that going into it, we're going to have to, scrimp and save. And you know what? That's just, we've always lived that way. So it wasn't that much of a difference.
So the big question is were you right? Have you done well with the level of income you've been able to make?
And so
you've been happy.
Yeah. So when I was in charter, it was tough, but I think something that's key is if you are the breadwinner in elementary, that's always the concern is are you going to be able to support a family?
Yeah. Are
you going to be able to, pay rent, all these things? It's living within your means. I think it's a huge thing. And being able to I'm not going to be able to go play and have fun and do these things because you know what? That's just part of life. And I think it's huge. So that's what I've done. And we've done just fine. And because we started that early on, because what I've seen with teaching is when you get into it beginning, I feel like your pay is very low. And if you're in for the long haul, through the years, you get your raises and you make a decent wage.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have to stick it out.
Yes, sir.
If you do not stick it out, you're low.
Yep.
Period. I would say the first 5-6 years is you're low, but it's usually after 6 years, you start to get a little increase here and there. And it's, now we're in a good spot. I mean, my wife still works, 10 hours a week from home.
Does she do anything related to her degree?
She does. So she works for a nonprofit. She works for Help Me Grow Utah, which is a subsidiary of United Way, which is helping families. She does their social media and helps post things online, spotlights, resources that are available, activities you can do with your children, stuff like that. So
cool.
We both were in it very early on knowing that, yes, our careers don't pay much, but we know we're making a difference in the world, which has helped. Our marriage has helped. We've been pretty, honest with each other on that, which has been great.
Yeah. Just have the right expectations and you'll be happy.
Exactly. I think that I feel like a lot of people, they choose not to do education for the pay, which is valid. We're with the current, housing prices and everything.
Right.
I understand that it's tough. But I wouldn't say don't do teaching because of that. because the joy that I get from teaching, I leave work each day feeling fulfilled. I mean, yeah, there's those rough days, right? And you hear people like, oh, I just feel like I'm babysitting all day. If you feel like you're babysitting all day after you've been teaching, you're not doing something right.
Not doing it correctly.
Yeah. Like every day there's something new that, just like, you know what? I couldn't get this in any other profession.
Yeah.
I feel fulfilled. I'm helping build the future.
So 10 years in, you feel fulfilled and you're happy with your decision still.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it as fun and as enjoyable as you thought it was going to be, or was it better? Is it better?
There's just tough moments, but I've loved it from student teaching. I've really enjoyed it. Like the connections I've built with students and seeing the impact I've had in their life. It's like, you can't put a dollar amount on. Like, I've taught third, I've taught fourth, I've taught fifth, and now this year I'm teaching sixth.
Oh, you're moving right up.
I'm moving right up.
So you started in third.
I started in third.
Third grade.
And when I taught charter, I went to fifth. And then when I moved to, public district, Alpine School District, I went to fourth, fifth, and now sixth. Okay. And, what has always influenced my decision is the students, right? Like this year, I chose to move to sixth grade because the current group I had in fifth grade. So I'm looping around with the majority of my students again.
Nice.
Like 25 of my 33 students this coming year I had last year.
Doing a repeat. Nice.
Doing a repeat.
Just so people know, we've just finished the school year. And so you've finished fifth grade year. And so in mid-August, you'll start with this sixth grade class.
Yeah, sixth grade class. And a lot of that has to do with the reason why I actually approached the principal and I asked my principal, I said, hey, I want to teach sixth grade next year. But my only condition is I need to have a few students in my class. The reason for that is because there was a couple of my students who had experienced a lot of trauma in their lives. I have one student who dad's not in the picture anymore. He when he was in second grade, found his dad dead. That's huge. Like that's gonna mess you up.
Yeah.
And he had just nothing but rough experience after rough experience in education. Just everything. He hated school, was always in the office. And I guess this is one of those instances where like he needed a male role model.
There you go.
And and that's true sometimes. And this last year I've bonded really well with the student and just seeing the trajectory in his life change. Like he wanted to come to school. He wanted to see his peers. And all these things. And I built a relationship with him and his peers. And I was a little like kind of like a fatherly figure. I feel like in teaching that happens a lot because like, if you really count down the hours and every single day, you spend a lot of time with these kids.
Yeah, you do.
In some cases you spend more time with them than their own parents.
Yep. Heard that before.
So unpack that for us. What did you do to build that relationship with the student?
I think it's coming back to what we were talking about earlier. It's making sure that my classroom was a safe place for them. This was a place that they could escape the, hard times of daily life. They don't have to worry about either, parents working or, fitting in or just all the stressors of life that no kid should feel. And making sure that like you come to my class, like, we're here to respect one another. Like very early on, I established my classroom. Like we are a team here. I don't care like what's happened in past years between you guys. Like what's a fresh start. I don't care what you've done in the past, but we're here to build each other up. We're on each other's team. And how do you
do that? So you tell them that. What sorts of activities, actions you were talking about play?
I would say it's just getting to know my students on a personal level.
Mm-hmm. So how do you do that?
So, I'll just be sitting, just what do you like to do for fun? And, just whatever they say, like some kids, like I grew up, like I am still a huge nerd. I love video games, board games, all those things.
That's a good way to relate to them.
It is. It really is. And just knowing what's current. But I feel like a lot of kids who are in that field, like those things, sometimes they can be hesitant about expressing those because they don't want to come across, I don't play sports. I'm nerdy. I'm different. Right. And so they don't share that. So, and it's not just with that, but it's finding a commonality that something you like and something that they like, at whatever it may be. And you can only do that by, hey, well, so what do you like to do for fun outside of school? Okay, sounds great. What do you like to, watch, whatever? And just relating. And it's actually putting in the time as well. Like if I don't know what a student's talking about, I'll go home and I'll research it. I put in the time because showing and then come back to school and talk about it with my students. And once they see that I have invested in their interests, it helps them go, oh, hey, he wasn't just saying that to just get me to talk.
Right.
But he actually wants to know who I am as a person.
Yeah, they feel valued. And, some of them really need that.
Yes.
Like I've noticed interacting with several of my students over the years, they almost seem starved for attention.
Yes.
And they just really soak up when somebody pays attention to them and legitimately is interested in them. Man, it's like they need that.
They need that because, it's just like they're trying to escape, hard things that are happening in their lives.
And some of the hardest students I've ever run across, like the hardest ones, they're the ones that soak that up the most.
Yes.
It's like,
and they're usually the ones that I stay in touch with the most through the years.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just yesterday, like my first group of students who I taught my first year ever, they graduated high school this year.
Nice.
And so it's kind of fun, seeing I've kept in contact with through social media with parents. I never reached out and was befriended students because that's a boundary.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's a boundary
here.
Yeah.
We understand.
And so
pass the ethics course here.
Yes,
yeah.
we do.
And so it's been cool reaching out to some of those kids and but those kids usually who come from a place with trauma or getting a bad rap because they just didn't make the best decisions. They're the ones I've stayed in contact with the longest because I created a relationship because I feel like those kids are the ones that need it the most. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not all kids need it, right? Yeah. But there are some who need it more than others. But yeah, no, it's been that was a huge influence in every day when I come home from work, there are days that are tough, but I'm you know what? The alternative of me not being there is I know that I don't know if that kid would have someone who would listen to him.
Yeah.
At home.
Yeah.
I know I have a coworker right now who he left his job in business. He'd worked in it for I can't remember 15 years, and then he had decided to sub on the side because he's I need to change my life. He's tired of the grind and feeling like he had to meet a quota and doing all these things and having a supervisor or manager hey, you need to get this done, and just very contentious in the business world. And he's like I left work every single day thinking, do I have to go again tomorrow?
Yeah.
It's miserable.
And he started subbing and he's this is kind of it was tough, but being able to have an impact on someone's life directly and help build the future, he decided to leave the business world after, he said, I was making good money, but I wasn't happy. And he left and he started, he didn't have a teaching license. He had his bachelor's in business, but so he decided, I'm going to try and apply to be a teacher. And he did. And he's on the alternate route to licensure. And he's, I'm pretty sure he's close to he's either accomplished it, gotten his license, or he's, close to it. But I've asked him multiple times, do you regret it? He goes, absolutely not. He goes, I leave every work every day knowing I've made a difference in the world, which is huge.
Yeah.
Not a bad feeling.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to follow up on building those relationships.
Yeah.
I'm imagining we have a listener who is maybe a guy like you guys were in the LED program. Mm-hmm. Someone has let them know about this podcast. They're still learning, how to do this. They go out and, they'll do student teaching, but the odds are not likely that they're going to have a male student teacher.
Yeah.
Or a male teacher mentor. And maybe this is partly impacting the male factor, but sounds like you built the relationships kind of informally, just maybe through little conversations at recess or just in the classroom. Did you do anything formally that way?
I would also I know I'd reach out to parents, especially with these kids that had behaviors. And all they've ever heard from in the past is my kid, like this kid got in trouble, or they get a phone call like your student's in the office again. And so it's just negative. And I was like, you know what? I need to do better at that. Like I would love to hear, like I have my own children. I would love to hear if a teacher like reached out like, hey, your child is doing, great. And I really like this last few years, I've used the Remind app, which it's an app where, because I feel like parents don't respond to emails as well as they would on their phones because it's text message. And the Remind app, I create an account, give them a code, they join the class. And then what will happen is, turn on their notifications. I send a message through Remind, comes through their phone on a text.
I didn't know that was a thing. I'm gonna have to look up.
Yeah,
look
and so this first year. This is the first year I've actually used Remind, and it has done wonders.
So you can just send them real positive feedback, like, hey,
just send it quick.
Johnny did this.
You can do it from your computer, log in, or from your phone, and you just type in, or you can do like quick announcement to the entire like class. All parents are on it, like because the likelihood, like I'll be honest, like I'll check my phone texts much faster that I do an email.
Right.
Oh, what a great idea.
I think other apps like Class Dojo
does that as well. Yep.
But without necessarily the type of behavior management.
Yeah. This is just like just pure reminders, whatever.
Right.
And that's done a lot. Like I had a parent this year for one of my students that she never, like she had a harder time, like she would respond very quick to texts, but she was so busy with her daily life and all these things that a phone call or an email, would get lost.
I love the fact that you point out that some parents need that positive reinforcement, like look for something immediately and try not just point it out to him, but maybe the parent.
And especially those kids who have had a history of had a rougher education, their parents need to hear it more than others because they're just as exhausted as we are. They've been here, except I've only been hearing it for this year.
Yeah.
Right.
They've been hearing it for who knows how long. And the appreciation, because then what that does is that it goes beyond the boundary of school. And then at home, because a lot of times at home, parents, we all have those kids in the class like, oh, you're getting that from home. I can, what they're saying about, what's happening in the world or politics or whatever. Like, that's not you who's speaking. That's mom and dad or whoever. Okay. And so, but having that positivity, that's going to go way beyond the boundaries of school. Like parents are like, yeah, I heard you did this awesome thing in school. It's like, then parents are going to get on board and be like, I love that your teacher did that. So then they come back to school like, mom and dad or grandma, grandpa, or uncle, whoever's watching over them is like talking positive about my teacher. So like, maybe I start changing a little bit.
What a great thought. I haven't even thought about it that way because oftentimes you'll hear educators complain about a child's home life. Like, oh, it's their home life or they're getting this from home or that from home. It's a good reminder that, even we as educators might be able to positively influence their home lives because it does have a domino effect. Like it might give a parent hope, that
for sure.
There's that maybe they hadn't had for a long time to be able to get just a little bit of positive reinforcement that in turn affects the way they interact with their child at home or the way they interact with the other kids or their spouse.
Yeah. No, it's big because not to kind of toot my horn or anything, but I know this year there's been, a couple students who dad's not in the picture. It's single mom.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that's hard. Being a parent, single parent, being a parent, with someone to help you is hard enough.
Yeah.
But being on your own, that's tough. So shout out to all those single parents out there. It's rough.
Holla.
Shout out, y'all.
Yeah, but and so I would reach out to some of these parents and hey, we got this. We can do this together kind of thing.
You're building that alliance with the parent. Yeah. Especially if it's a single parent. They know that you're on their team. And again, there's that sense of safety in the relationship where you actually see good and you are trying to see the good in my kid.
Yeah. I know that's wonders.
Yeah, parents want to do that.
They want to hear the good things about their kid. Who wouldn't want to hear? You don't want to hear oh, your kid's a turd all day long, kind of thing.
Nobody wants to hear that.
No.
So is that a uniquely? I mean, I know it's not a uniquely male thing. Obviously, we have female teachers who do that very well. But again, going back to one of the big questions of this episode here, Landon, what are the elements that when people say, oh, we need male teachers in elementary and that role model piece, what do people mean by that?
I feel like because, kids, there's a lot of females in the teaching area. And so
89% of elementary teachers are female.
And so having that male, I've kind of had to think of it like females, they've had their perspective as, females their entire life. So when they have their students that are female, they kind of understand a little bit more of how they think. Right. Because they experience that.
Right.
Whereas I'm a male. And so typically boys are more energetic. Mm-hmm. Boys are a little bit more impulsive, more wiggly. Okay. And because, it's nice having that male figure because it's kind of well, I experienced that. I kind of know what they're going through.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's part of it is that's why they want males in, elementary is because, they can only relate so much. Just like how I have my female students who they, I can't relate entirely with them. Mm-hmm. Okay. But it's good to switch things up, and males have a different approach to things. Right. I mean, not all.
Yeah.
We're all different.
I know there's parenting research on kind of the way that mothers interact or play with their kids is more, they describe it kind of as a cooperative play. Oh, what are you doing? I'll kind of join in with you. Whereas dads are more of an interrupting play style. So they get home from school, hey, or they get home from work, hey, come here, I want to grab you. We're going to do whatever I feel like doing right now. And whatever you're doing, sorry, this is the game we're playing now.
Yeah, so, and I feel like that kind of translates into, into school.
Yeah.
Right, very cooperative, my female counterparts, very cooperative, great. But then I'm sometimes scatterbrained. I show up and I'm just like, hey, how's it going, guys? I'm like, hey.
It's a different energy.
It's just a different energy. And I think a lot of times that's what they mean is they want that different energy.
Right.
Because, it's different.
Yeah. Kids bring a certain frequency of energy or an amount of energy. It's nice to have someone who can, I guess, meet that.
Exactly.
And operate at the same wavelength or on the same frequency.
Yeah. I also feel like a little bit that males, they bring a different humor to the school, to the classroom.
No doubt.
That's been my biggest thing, I feel like, is, students need to feel safe, and you just need to have fun and laugh.
Yeah.
Right.
That's been a huge thing. And because if you can bring laughter into it, I mean, these kids are sitting down, hopefully not sitting down, but they're in school for 6 hours?
Yeah.
Doing education, doing these rigorous things. And if you can't laugh about situations, I mean, I'd be bored too.
Yeah.
I would oh gosh, get me out of here.
Tell us about a time where you really laughed with.
I laugh all the time with my students. There's times being in fifth grade, sometimes kids will say things that, I can't laugh at because, I shouldn't.
Right.
But it's hard. And the kids can tell me that because I'll hide my face and I'll just sit there. But one of my favorite things is, I talk about every year, doesn't matter the age, kids, they got to fart sometimes,
Yep.
It just happens. And I get it. You got that school lunch and you got to do your thing. Mm-hmm. But I've always, I'm pretty honest with my kids because I'll be stuck at a small table and there'll always be someone that will just leave a little present for me and go back to their desk and I'm stuck there. And so I've had this, I'm pretty honest about it. I'm like, guys, if you gotta, go, let your gas out, just go. I don't care. Just go outside. Go, please.
Yes. Please.
Because I'm stuck here. I have to sit here and breathe it in. And the kids kind of get a chuckle about that because you're saying fart, ooh, a grown man saying that, whatever.
Right.
But one story in particular, I remember I was teaching, and I'll tell them, guys, it happens to me too. I've got to do it.
Yeah.
But I got to be courteous to my peers.
Yeah.
And I remember, and so I share with them a story. I love telling stories. That's probably I love telling stories. It's my favorite thing to do is I love to tell stories. So there was this one time I was teaching third grade. So this is my first year teaching. And when you first start teaching, your body's got to get used to Because as a teacher, you can't just go use the bathroom.
Oh my goodness, yeah. There's some rigors.
There's some rigors. And so I remember my classroom was kind of weird shaped, like all students, it was like shaped kind of like a rectangle. And all my kids' desks were like towards the front of the classroom. My desk was in the back. And I was like, okay, everybody's working silently. So I was like, I really just, I had to pass gas. Like I just had to, or I was going to die.
Yeah.
You know, like, and so I remember
It's a tough situation to be in.
I farted, whatever. I was like, okay. I was like, oh no, this smells terrible.
I was like, dreaded SBD.
And I was like, what am I going to do? I'm sitting there going, oh no, please, no one come to the back. Don't come to the back because the only person they're going to call out is me.
Yep.
I'm the culprit.
I'm the person back there. You're not holding the baby, and you can
Wasn't
blame it on the
me.
baby.
Yeah. And so this student comes back, and this is a good. I'm caught.
Yeah.
She comes back to ask me a question. She goes, Mr. Morton, but she just audible. And this is burned into my mind for the rest of my days. She just goes. And she goes, Mr. Mortenson. And she goes, Pale gets better. She
Calls
goes,
you right out.
are you wearing man perfume? Because this smells good back here.
Oh, that is funny. Very diplomatic, that one.
And so I cannot hold it back. I am like laughing so hard at my desk.
And losing control of
Losing
your fingers.
control.
Oh, no.
It's just
I'm laughing and laughing. She goes, why are you laughing? I'm like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And so like, it's these moments like you got to like laugh at the situations. Like I could have been mortified.
Yeah.
I could have just like, oh my goodness. But it's just like, we're human. Like it's part of life, just live in the moment.
Yeah.
Laugh about things.
6 hours every day.
Every day.
You got to have those moments. And
Well, it's like, and there's times of teaching, like, I'm not perfect. Like, I'm going to mess up in a lesson. We all do.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, here's another story. This was this year. We were, I was teaching, U.S. history and the Declaration of Independence, when it was signed, and my dates were wrong. I talked about, like, they signed it on the 4th of July, and this girl in my class, very, very smart, she raises her hand and she goes, I think you're wrong on that. I think it was in August that they signed it. And I was like, no, what are you talking about? But I was kind of like, are you sure? And she goes, oh yeah. And so, I was like, well, fine, let's look it up. And she was right. I was wrong. You got to own up to it. I was like, I was wrong. And she wasn't being the most graceful. She's like, ha ha, you got it wrong. Ha ha. And then she started walking back to her, like kind of like walking backwards back to her desk. And then she turns at the right moment, and she totally like trips over her chair and eats it on the floor. And she was a good sport, and she starts to laugh. Whole class starts laughing. I'm like, I built this relationship with him that I know I can joke with him. And I just looked at her and I may not know my dates in history, but at least I know how to sit in a chair. The whole class just bursts up in laughter. She's laughing, and so it comes down to laughing with your students, laughing at yourself. And even and if you laugh at yourself, like they start to learn that because that's important in life.
Yeah. And I love that. I feel like those are like some of the most valuable lessons we teach because kids and adults will obsess over making a mistake or humiliating themselves or embarrassing themselves. And what we teach them by being willing to laugh at our own selves and to find humor in some of those otherwise really embarrassing situations can be a really great coping skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, they're, especially at the ages that they're in, like 5th, 6th grade.
Yeah.
Like their bodies are changing. They don't know what to think or feel at times. And they feel super awkward, super embarrassed. And just to let them know, like, it's okay to like make mistakes and laugh at yourself and just move on with it.
Yeah, I've often wondered if that isn't why we make mistakes or we do embarrassing things like fart in class or whatever else. It's because we need to learn that there are certain things in life that aren't that terrible.
Yeah,
making a mistake isn't that terrible. Embarrassing yourself isn't that terrible. And if we can come together, I guess my main point is we all do it. We can empathize with each other and help each other through some of the hard times.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just feel like certain kids even adults will just obsess over things that if they would just let go and see some of the humor in it, they would be a lot happier. Yeah. And sometimes we need to model that as teachers or as adults in their lives.
Absolutely. Huge.
Good for mental health.
It really is.
Oh,
and
yeah.
just laughing about situations, like now, that's just one thing about like teaching in general. Like you have to, I feel like, yes, we have our curriculum. Yes, we have all these things that we need to teach, math, science, history, all of it. But like at the end of the day, like you also want to teach them how to be good humans.
Yeah.
Like that, I think that's what's going to take them the furthest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, you could be book smart, but if you're not like a good person or know how to like talk with people, that's what's going to make the biggest difference.
Yeah. How are you going to share, or how are you going to use what you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. You want to have those relationships where it can benefit.
And you do that by teaching, like modeling that.
Yeah.
Right
and
on.
some of the best lessons ever are the accidental lessons.
Oh,
right?
it really is.
Accidental lessons, not planned.
No.
Right. Because I guess you're teaching them how to respond to unplanned events, right?
Absolutely.
And that's called life. Responding to unplanned events.
I used to think I could not make a mistake as a teacher. And I had to be the smartest person in the room every time. This is when I was a brand new teacher. And how embarrassing would it be if I made a mistake? But I learned real quickly that those are some of the best lessons.
Absolutely.
The best. A girl or whoever corrects me and says, that may not be correct. Just modeling the humility of being like, okay, can you help me find my mistake versus what do you mean? I'm not wrong. And I'm never wrong.
Yeah. And it's not, and even as an adult, it's hard at times. Like, cause like a lot, like, are they being disrespectful?
Yeah.
Are they talking back to me? But no, like, I feel like a lot of times genuinely, they're like, no, they want to show you.
Right.
And I think it's being, humble about that.
Yeah. And there's training that we can give them to where they can do
For
that
sure.
in a non-aggravating manner, that they can be courteous and be polite about pointing out mistakes. I do a lot with that. But certainly receiving that sort of feedback with grace. You're a good role model, Mr. Mortenson.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Appreciate all the wisdom and the laughter you have shared with us today.
It's all about laughter. That's
Next time I see you at training, I'm going to walk over to your table and I'm going to go,
Just start sniffing.
Is that man perfume? And so like my students will come up to me, and ones I've had in past years, so I always tell that story. And they'll just go, how's your man perfume?
yes. Isn't that nice to have? And that is an inside
Now you
joke.
can say
There's
it.
nothing cements a relationship more like an inside joke.
It's true, though.
It's so true. Because
like-
years later.
Years later, they're going to come up to me when I'm an old man. How's that man perfume?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's around you right now.
I don't know, man. You must have bathed in it this morning.
Anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Just to any of those who are considering teaching, do it. I love it. People always worry, the pay, yes, sure, whatever, but just do it. You won't regret it.
Right on.
Awesome. Well, we'd like to thank you, Landon.
Yes.
And
yes.
we would love you to come back and teach at our school. This guy's a fantastic dude to work with. So, All right. Well, I'm Sean.
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Landon.
Signing off. Thank you.